Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Just Listen to Yourself podcast with Kiradavis. I am your host, of course, Kiradavis, and you're listening to me on my home at the FCB Radio Network. So proud to be a part of this network. I want to thank everybody, of course, for all of your positive reviews. We're getting more and more reviews every day, more and more ratings every day. I'm so impressed with how this show is catching on and how people are really excited to be a part of the conversation. We've had some interesting topics. I even did a reader response this week to Tina Whittington, who took issue with some of the things I was saying about gender equality, particularly about paid family leave. She came at me with an email that was just chock full of information, and she really made her arguments well. And so I asked her if I could read her letter on air and respond, and she said yes. So you can go back and listen to that. It's the last episode, and I'd love to do that with more of you. So if you have a response, please feel free to email me. You can find my email at my Twitter account, which is at realkiradavis. Go on there, copy, paste, send me an email. If your argument is good, I will read it on air and I'll respond, and I'm happy to. I love a good argument. Of course, that's why I do this show, right? This is a show where I take talking points, typical talking points, and draw them all the way out to their logical conclusion. Because I think when we really listen to the things we're saying, we might come up with a different view, or we might realize that we don't really believe what we thought we did. It's a thought exercise. It's an exercise in persuasion. I'm going to take a different tact today. I have a couple of other episodes that I've been working on, but they're information heavy. So I'm trying to figure out a way. You guys know I hate to bog you down with stats and numbers. I don't typically use them when I'm making my arguments. If I was maybe on a debate stage, I would have all that stuff. But just for a podcast, and you guys are driving in your car, I don't think you want to hear, statistics and math and numbers. I don't even like looking up that stuff. So I know you don't want to hear it, but there are two subjects that I think at least deserve a little bit of information, statistically speaking, on the back end. So I want to make sure I have everything right before I take the argument to you. I owe you that, and I owe myself that. So today I'm taking a little bit of a turn. I wouldn't necessarily call this a persuasive episode, but here in Southern California, we've been having a huge problem with homelessness. And I want to take some time to explain this problem to you, because I think a lot of people who don't live here don't really understand what we're up against here. And I'm kind of getting sick and tired of seeing friends on Facebook who don't know anything about the situation here, whining about, or I shouldn't say whining, that's a rude word to use. They're not whining. I'm whining right now. That's what I'm doing. Complaining about the heartlessness of California residents. In particular, I had a friend one day who posted a picture of a man, a homeless man, outside a restaurant. He was actually laying outside of the patio boundaries of a restaurant. And there was a family eating a meal in this outdoor patio. And then this man who's clearly homeless, dirty clothes, clothes half on. He's just kind of spaced out. He's laying there right in the middle of the street, and people are just kind of eating their dinner around him, eating next to him, and it looks like no one's noticing him. And my friend posted, I'm so sick of this. She used some expletives, but basically what she was saying is, I'm so sick of this. How can you be so cruel just to overlook this problem and it's right in front of you? Like, Americans have a problem. It was in San Francisco. And I know the situation in San Francisco. And I know that family wasn't sitting there going, we don't want to feed this guy. I know that there's a bigger issue. And so I said something in it, and it bothered her, that I wasn't getting the point, that people need to be helped. So I want to use this time to let all of you out there know that I do get the point. I do understand that people need to be helped. And I think we have a fundamental disagreement, particularly in California, on what that help looks like. I want to break down to you the problem with California's homeless crisis and why we're having issues getting it under control and why it is very dangerous and what I think we can do about it. Here's part of the issue. Number one, certainly there are people in this society who are downtrodden, who are down on their luck, who lose a job. And in a place like California, the cost of living, there are several tiers to this issue. obviously everything is nuanced, right? It's not as easy as saying we're not throwing enough money at the problem. I think LA just got recently, I think the voters approved like a $17 billion initiative for the homeless. So, I mean, the taxpayers are definitely being generous with their money. But let's break down these arguments. Okay, so the first argument that we have about why do we have so many homeless people in California? What exactly is going on here? A lot of people will say different things like housing costs or just people being uncaring, not enough money. But let's start at the start. You guys know I like to do that. One of the issues here is that other states are shipping their homeless to California. This is true and verifiable. Other states will provide bus tickets for their homeless to travel to California for obvious reasons. You get that person off your tax, burden. You get that person out of your state. You don't have to provide services for them. It's better for your state. It's better for your statistics. And if you're a governor or a politician running, then you don't have to worry about the homeless people causing you issues with your publicity campaign. You give them a bus ticket, $300 to California. They get off the bus downtown LA, downtown San Francisco. LA City Council estimates that on any given day, around 300 homeless people exit a bus in downtown LA from other states. So already we're having the problem shipped in. We have our own, obviously, but a lot of these people are shipped in. The other issue we have is these loopholes that allow for predatory providers to set up sober living homes. So sober living homes are great. I have a lot of friends who have struggled with addiction, and sometimes you need a home to recuperate in, a normal place. You don't belong in jail. You shouldn't be back home where the drug use started because there's all kinds of triggers there. You need a place where you can go, where you can live peacefully, learn how to live on your own as a mature, sober citizen in the company of medical professionals. So sober living has all kinds of great applications. Unfortunately, the way the California law is set up, I won't go into the ins and outs of it, but you can look it up. But the way California law is set up, sober living facilities are very profitable here, and they can pop up wherever. In fact, we're having an issue in my quiet little suburb here with sober living housing. The good ones are great. The good ones work. The good ones do their jobs. Those are the ones you see on like Intervention, which I love. I love that show on A&E. Those are the ones you see. They exist here, and there's plenty of them. But there's way more predatory sober housing. So this is what they do. They entice people from other states, addicts from other states. They take their insurance and they put them into sober living. But as soon as the insurance runs out, they just put them out on the street. And where does an addicted young man go when he's from Minnesota and he's all the way in Laguna Beach now? He doesn't know anyone except the people in this house. His insurance has run out. He's really not finished with his treatment. He needs to be there a year. He's only been there 6 weeks. And where does he go? Where does that kid go? All his ties with his family are gone. He doesn't have any friends. Where does he go? He doesn't have any choice. He's got to go to the streets. And what's on the streets? Is there help on the streets? No, there's more drug dealers on the streets. And you need a place to go. Where do you sleep? You see a group of tents. You go steal a tent. You set up. You figure out how to get your drugs. And then you do that. And then now you're a homeless person. And now you're back to being addicted. So we're importing homelessness into California besides our own homelessness. Now, the city of LA estimates that there are about 60,000 homeless people within LA proper boundaries and another 120,000 more in LA County. I think that is an extremely conservative estimate. If you go into Los Angeles today, as I'm recording this, there is almost no place where you can remain untouched by homelessness. Almost nowhere. Some of the environs of LA have managed to enforce their vagrancy laws. We're going to talk a little bit about that. They've managed to keep their streets clean, but it is growing exponentially. And I don't know anyone in this part of the country who has not been affected by homelessness. So it is a vast amount of people. And don't even get me started on Skid Row. I mean, you go down there and you just cannot believe how many people are packed into just a few square blocks. It's absolute insanity. So if you're wondering how we have all these homeless people, why do we have all these homeless people? This is how. This is part of it. They're being shipped in. Okay. They're being shipped in. Where do all these people go once they get here? I mean, they've got all this access to, it's sunny weather. They're never really going to be cold. It might get at the coldest here in Southern California. In the wintertime, it might get to be around in the 50s. You know what I mean? Like, it's survivable. It's not like being homeless in the Midwest in the middle of winter, which is why there aren't very many I came from one of the worst cities in America, Gary, Indiana, and I don't hardly ever remember any homeless around there. But there's no homeless around there because you can't sleep on the street in the winter. See, homeless people have a lot more sense than we think they do. They know what they're doing a lot of the time. They have more sense than we think they do. If it's hard to be homeless, you won't be homeless. Oh, that's a big argument I'm going to make. And you know what? Let's just say that this entire podcast this is kind of the argument I'm making. When we make it easy, we don't help people, and then we exacerbate the problem. So one of the issues that is making it difficult to clear our streets of criminal homeless, I'll say, because I'm not talking about the down on their luck. I'm not talking about the person who lost their job and can't afford rent. Those people actually aren't on the streets because the California taxpayer is actually incredibly generous. And we have a lot of programs aimed at serving families and people who are homeless to get them off the street and back on the taxpayer rolls. And those people have already availed themselves of those programs. Do you know why? Because when you're sane, you don't like pooping in the street. And so you do things to not have to do that. And one of those things is finding help. And there's churches and there's charities besides what the government offers, which is a lot. Those people aren't on the street. These aren't the people we're talking about. Typically, we're talking about addicts, the criminally insane, or the mentally ill. Now, we have these vagrancy laws. Every city has vagrancy laws. You have vagrancy laws. The idea is that in order to keep your streets safe for the families, for the people that pay taxes, you make it illegal. You can't camp on your sidewalk, right? Wherever you are right now listening to this podcast, if you take a tent onto your city sidewalk or your town's sidewalk and you put that tent up and then you add another cook tent and then you add another, if there's 3 tents and suddenly on the sidewalk out front of your house, eventually the police are going to come by and they're going to cite you. They're going to give you a ticket, a fine, or maybe they'll even arrest you. If you choose to go and pull down your pants in the middle of the street and drop a deuce right there, the police will come and arrest you. Because that's not sanitary. So we have to have laws to prevent that. That's why we have indoor plumbing. It's not because it feels nicer. It's because it's safer. So the police will come and they'll cite you and you'll move along. You'll move yourself. You'll move along. It's chaos if you don't have those laws. Well, in California, we have basically erased those laws. We have basically taken the teeth out of all of our vagrancy laws. So what happens is when people complain, I'll use LA, downtown LA as an example, because this is the best and most egregious example. In downtown LA, it started by lifting the laws for camping. They did it at City Hall first. This happened during the remember the Occupy Wall Street protests? And a lot of people were asking for rights to camp on city property. And they did it under the guise of protest. But I was a reporter at that time, and I covered a lot of the Occupy protests. And I can tell you that the protesters had homes. They went places. The protesters would come at night from their apartments and with their iPhones and their laptops. And those people were cared for and well off. The people that were camping during the day were homeless people, and they were just taking advantage of this thing that was going on. So the city, in their attempt to be woke, in their attempt to be supportive of the Occupy movement, lifted the ban on camping on city property, City Hall. I mean, it just snowballed from there. Then people started putting their tents on the sidewalk. And there's always been tents under underpasses or whatever. Those things come and go. But usually what happens is the police drive by. They tell the people that, hey, you got to keep it trucking. You can't live here. You can't stay here. And those people go and then they find another place and on and on and on. But what happens is it makes it uncomfortable for people to do that. And so fewer and fewer people do it, because it's just not worth it. It's just too much of a hassle. They either move on to another place where they can be homeless, or they find a program to help them get off the streets so they don't have to deal with the inconvenience of this. So now we don't have any laws to protect the business owners or homeowners from tent encampments right next to their buildings, because now it's legal. Well, that's a fire hazard. We live in fire country. A lot of these people are cooking with propane. Last year, LA alone had 220 fires caused by homeless encampments. 220. These people cook with propane. Oh, and don't get it twisted. These cities have electricity, by the way. You can come to downtown LA and you can see the wires, that they've jacked from some neighbor here or some neighbor there. These people have Wi-Fi. These people have phones. Do you understand me? The state of California provides smartphones for homeless people. I kid you not. I'm not making it up. Now you've got a tent city in front of your business in LA. This is actually a real life problem, especially downtown in the fashion district. Tent city, your customers can't even get in the door. You've got feces and urine right outside your door. Not only is it unsanitary, but what customer wants to walk through that to get to your designer shop? Nobody. The police can't do anything. The vagrancy laws have been suspended. They're not allowed to tell someone that they can't live on the street. So the business owner takes it upon himself. I've got to hose down this sidewalk. I'm going to hose down this sidewalk every day, get rid of the poop, get rid of the pee. And then, and that'll be a way to make it uncomfortable for this person to put a tent literally in front of my front door. Oh, well, here comes LA City Council. You know what? That's discriminatory. You can't spray down in front of your business. You're not allowed to do that. It's judgmental. It's aimed at moving the homeless. I wish I was making this up, people. I wish I was. I swear on my grandmother's grave, this is the God's honest truth. Shop owners can be cited for spraying down the sidewalk in front of their businesses because it is considered discriminatory to the homeless. Now, let's just say that disease breaks out. There's fleas, there's rats, and finally someone gets a council member to, instruct the police to remove these encampments for whatever reason. That, by the way, that takes months and months and months of judgments and court cases. I mean, it's an extremely and absurdly long amount of time that it takes just to get permission to remove a homeless encampment from in front of the business that you own. To get it removed from the property that you own, by the way. Yes, the police, if you can move all that stuff, the problem is the police can't just come and take the stuff because that's considered private property. If you've got a bag that's full of dead kittens, and believe me, that's something you can see in downtown LA. You see all kinds of crazy stuff. Police aren't even allowed to take that. It's someone else's property. There's a whole homeless advocate industry in LA, as crazy as it sounds. It's a business. And these groups come up and they say, you can't move this stuff. Or if you're going to move it, you have to provide a secure location for it to go to. So now the city needs to come up with some kind of locker system that can house thousands of tons of infected, diseased, bug-ridden street junk. But fine. LA voters have said, fine, we'll do that. We'll do it. Well, that's not enough. The wheels turn so slowly. The population is growing more quickly than whatever small legal recourse the citizenry has. So another thing that the LA business owners have decided to do is they have decided to put big planters in front of their business. So you know, like a flower planter, or maybe there's a tree. What it does is it narrows the usable space on the sidewalk so people can still walk, but there's not enough room for a tent. Oh, well, let me tell you, I was hosting ABC radio, filling in for Dr. Drew the other day in LA, and I had a caller, a business owner from downtown LA, and he said he put up a planter in front of his business. In fact, the whole block of businesses decided to do it because the city wasn't removing the tent encampment along that street, and they weren't able to do business. So they all pooled their own money and put planters on the sidewalk. This guy said, listen, I've got a homeless encampment literally in the back lot of this business. 2 fires have been set back there that thank God didn't spread to the building. 2 fires have been set back there. I've called the city repeatedly. They will not come out to fix the problems. It took them 2 days to come out and cite us for the planters on the sidewalk. If you're homeless and you want to erect a tent city and poop in the street, no one's coming for you. If you're a business owner and a taxpayer and you put a planter, a nice, pretty planter on the sidewalk to make it look cleaner, the police are there in 2 days to cite you. Starting to get the picture here? All right, let's move on. Let's move on to California's criminal sentencing laws and Prop 9. Now, one of the things that Jerry Brown had promised to do and Gavin Newsom has continued is to lower the prison population. But lowering the prison population by lifting people out of poverty and lifting people out of undereducation, that's too hard. So the way they decided to lower the prison population was to just drop down the sentencing requirements. So they emptied the prisons. Basically, certain things that were felonies are now misdemeanors, and certain things that are misdemeanors are now nothing. And then they had this weird part of this law too. This is the craziest part. You're going to die when you hear this. You can be a rapist who broke into a lady's house, stole her purse, and then raped her. If you are convicted by the state of California, the state will only consider the first charge on the record in any considerations they make to release you early. So maybe you did go to jail, you did get a 10-year, 12-year sentence for raping this woman in her own home, but the first charge on the list is petty theft. And that is the charge that the state will consider when considering whether or not to give a convict early release. I kid you not. We literally have rapists and murderers on the streets because their lawyers know that if they can get that first lesser charge listed at the top, they're going to be eligible for early release. So not only do we have all these vagrancy laws suspended, we can't do anything with these people. Now we have a criminal element that comes out of prison. A lot of them in this part of the country, particularly Southern California, are illegal. That's kind of why they ended up in the system in the first place. You know, they just got into trouble, got gangs. You know, a lot of gangs are just people join them to find a home and to find security or whatever. So we have a lot of people here illegally, and once they're released into the streets, where do they go? They don't have family. They're like the people that get kicked out of sober living. They don't have family. They don't have a support system. They don't have a home to go to. Where do they go? They go to the streets. And what's on the streets besides homeless people and poop? Gangs. Because gangs know that there's no cops down there. You go to Skid Row, there are 2 gangs that run Skid Row right now. That's Guatemalans, and I think the Hondurans are the other ones. That it's a huge problem. And what they do is they hoard resources. So everything that we do for the homeless population down there, they just steal. So if we put public latrines, which we have done repeatedly in the city of LA, if we put public latrines out, what happens is the gang members will claim those, and then they'll charge the homeless people to use them. Not only that, they'll use them as space for prostitution or space to shoot up in. This is another thing that we do. We offer syringes to drug addicts and legal drop-off locations for those syringes. I guess the idea is that if we help people do drugs cleanly, that we'll be helping them be more sanitary, be safer. it couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, homeless people don't use that. Drug addicts don't use that service. There are syringes everywhere. There are needles everywhere. Second of all, I can't think of one. Listen, I'm a huge intervention fan, the show Intervention, so I'm pretty much an expert on addiction. And I can't think of one drug counselor who would say that the best way to treat an addict is to enable an addict. Forget your politics. Forget those. This isn't, by the way, this is not a political conversation today, y'all. Not at all. Not in the least. Here in Southern California, everyone is on the same page except the politicians. Liberals, conservatives, everybody is talking about this. This is not a political issue. So we're enabling the drug use and the drug sales to continue. Again, there is no way to enforce the law. Now, here's the other thing that's going to blow your mind about this Prop 9, this emptying of the prisons that put more criminals and dangerous criminals. We're not just talking about guys who just smoked weed and got convicted on a silly charge. We're talking about rapists. We're talking about murderers who just took advantage of that loophole. And it's happening to this day. Here's the other thing. The new laws state that you can steal up to $950 worth of merchandise a day and only be ticketed for it. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. You can steal up to $950 a day of merchandise or goods from a location, from a business in LA, and you will only be ticketed. Now, the police don't even ticket anymore, because what good does it do to ticket a homeless person? You know, you got no place to send a summons. You got no place to send a bill. You got no way to enforce, to ensure that they pay, and pay with what? What are they going to pay with? Do you see how all this is working? You can go on to YouTube right now. Go on to YouTube right now and type in Santa Monica homeless, and you will see video after video after video of homeless people walking confidently into corner stores, liquor stores, CVS, and basically just shopping. And when the owner tries to say, hey, that's stealing, they will literally look that owner in the face and say, you can't do anything about it, and I'll be back tomorrow. Not only are we making it easier for them to find the creature comforts that they need, food and water, at no cost, but we're also making it easier for them to sit in their drug addiction, because what they're really doing is stealing things that they can sell. And it's all to support the drug habit. And they don't even need to buy syringes, because the state provides syringes. And then they certainly don't need to make sure those syringes get disposed of properly. You can find case after case after case of LA City employee having to go through months and months of HIV testing, STD testing, because they've stepped on a needle in their job, or they've been poked by a needle in their job. It happens all the time. So we are in a state of chaos right now, and the police can't help. And by the way, this is not to disparage the police. You can talk to LA police and they'll say, in fact, when I was hosting Dr. Drew's show, a police officer did call in and he said, this is not what we want. We want to do our jobs. This isn't what we signed up for. We signed up to be peace officers, to be servants of the people. And people call us, and we have to look at what's been done to their businesses set on fire, or people using the bathroom in front of the front doors, tent cities, all of the drug use right in front of schools. And the police, you're looking at desperate citizens who are saying, help us. And the police literally have their hands tied, cannot help. The law has taken all the teeth out of what they can do as public servants. And they hate it. They don't like that. It makes them feel bad, because it's not what they got into this for. So a lot of times what you'll hear police say is, you need to call your councilman. You need to call your councilman. That's kind of the police line now, because they really can't do anything. Right? The picture is starting to develop here. It's not cruelty on our part. It's cruelty on the part of the leaders who won't allow for these things to happen, to discourage homelessness. You won't eliminate. Listen, I'm not arguing that we're going to eliminate homelessness. I really am not. I get that. But homelessness does not need to be this level of a crisis, this many people. Jesus himself said the poor will always be with you. And I get that. And I understand that. And that's why as Christians, And perhaps your faith requires it too, if you're not a Christian. But for Christians, we are called to serve each other, not called to give our money to a faceless, cold bureaucracy that maybe will get the money to the people who need it. No, you're called to be the servant, to use your feet, your hands, your income, your grace, your love. You are called to serve your neighbors. So I do believe that if the homeless situation if this was a normal situation, then those of us out here who do the charity work and the government stopgap programs would be enough to serve this population. I genuinely believe that, but that's not what we have here, as I have laid out for you. We are under siege with lawlessness. So we've gone through how we're getting the homeless, how they're getting here, the complete decimation of vagrancy laws, the weird prison early release laws, and the drop down in felonies to misdemeanors. I mean, imagine being a shop owner. Oh my gosh. Imagine you've come to this country from, I don't know, Vietnam. You open a little corner store and it's your American dream. And then you basically have to sit there helpless while person after person after person just walks into your store and walks off with your product. No one's had the guts to release a survey yet, not that I can find, of how many businesses have left LA because of the homeless problem, but I'm beginning to believe it's a lot. Now here's the biggie. A lot of people will say, Kira, everything you're saying makes sense. Of course, these laws sound ridiculous. There's no argument against them, no matter what side of the fence politically you're on. But where are these people going to go? How do we house them? The cost of living in California is outrageous. No wonder people are homeless. They can't afford to live anywhere. What do we do for these people? How do we house them? So I have 2 points on that. I'm already forgetting what I said at the beginning of the podcast. I may have made this point earlier that it's not actually a cost of housing issue. We do have an outrageous housing cost issue here, without a doubt. And while it plays into how we treat the homeless issue, and I'm about to break that down for you, it's not the cause of the homeless issue. Again, just to go back to what we're saying, we are no longer looking at people who have just lost a job and are down on their luck. We're looking at a population that's sick and don't want help. This is what a lot of people who haven't worked with the homeless. I have, my church does. I've done it here. I've done it in the Midwest. When you work with the homeless population, you understand that there is a certain percentage in LA. I would say it's about 99% at this point. They don't want the help. And that sounds crazy. I know it sounds so weird to hear that, because you're a normal person and you like to pee inside and you like to have a refrigerator full of food. You can't imagine that there are people who would choose that life, honestly choose it, but there are. That's the thing. And a lot of it's mental illness. They don't have the ability to choose anything else. They need treatment. Dr. Drew says, and this scares me, it's his assessment that there are a huge amount of schizophrenics on the street of LA. And he says schizophrenia is a progressive disease. So if you treat it early, if you catch it early and you treat it, then those people can actually go on to be healed and live normal lives and be productive members of society. But the older you get, the longer you live with it, the more it deteriorates your brain. It literally eats your brain, basically, is what he's saying. And so at a certain point, people get to a point where they cannot be helped, where they can't be healed. Their brain will never work the same again. They will always be this insane. We are condemning thousands of people to torture and misery because we're not willing to treat the root cause. So it's not people who can't afford, it's not just like I can't afford the rent in LA. I mean, no one can afford the rent in LA, so I get that. But it's not some guys like, I can't afford the rent in LA, I guess I better live in the street and pee in the street and poop in the street. That's not what it is. It's a guy who doesn't even see anything wrong with that, who doesn't have a problem with it. The few people that are somewhat sane on the street, and the scholars and the counselors and the workers who have studied this problem in LA for years now all say that most of what's left in the LA homeless population is probably legally insane or mentally ill or addicted in some way, all three. But the people who have really needed the housing, we've helped them. They're out of the way. We don't have a housing issue, but then we have all these laws that say you can't permanently move these people off the street without providing permanent housing. But we live in the most densely packed place in the United States. One of them, maybe next to New York City. There's no land left in LA. There's nothing left to develop. We're just redeveloping the same properties at this point. There's nothing left. So where do those houses go? Where do they go? No one wants that housing in their neighborhood. Nobody does. Nobody wants a homeless. We're not talking about shelters, by the way. We got plenty of shelters. This is not what the law is asking. The law is actually asking for the taxpayer to build apartments for these people so that they can go and have permanent housing. They don't want permanent housing. They don't want to live inside. There are some people who actually just live on the street because they just don't want to follow the rules. Some of those people, and the rest don't want to be inside because they're scared of it for whatever, because they're insane. But the state has this idea. We got to build apartments. We got to build permanent housing. By the way, very insulting to the taxpayer who is struggling to pay rent paycheck to paycheck. Where did somebody build me $700,000 apartment? Oh, I didn't mention that part. Oh, so LA's got the 17 billion, and I think it's actually more, but 17 billion is what I'm landing on right now to build permanent homeless housing. Now, conservative estimates are that the homeless population is at 60,000 in LA. So far, the amount of units that will offer permanent housing amount to 46. That's right. 46 people have been placed in permanent housing so far. And the cost of each apartment, $700,000. Oh yeah. $700,000 per homeless person's apartment, which homeless housing is an oxymoron, but whatever. You do the math on that one. And so no, people don't want these facilities, these permanent facilities in their neighborhoods. It's not like, it isn't what the movies say it is. It isn't what the movies tell you it is. That if you get this person off the street, they're going to be so grateful. You just get them a hot meal, you give them a shower and a sense of dignity and pride, and they just turn their lives around. That's not the people we're dealing with. Those people have been helped. Those people aren't on the street anymore. The people who are on the street are criminals, addicts, or criminally insane, or all three. So of course somebody doesn't want that in their neighborhood. And I know some of you are out there going, well, some of us have to make a sacrifice. Yeah, who? Which one of us? Guess what? I did 10 years in the murder capital of the United States. And now I pay a buttload of money to live in a place where I don't have to worry about getting shot at every day. I did my time. Don't I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor as someone who worked her ass off? My husband worked his ass off to get his family out of the place that he grew up in. What about us? What about people like us? No, I don't want a facility. These aren't the people who are just going to go and turn their lives around. These are people who will be outside. They will continue to defecate in the streets. They will continue to bring their addictions into an area now where there are families, where there are schools. So you can understand that some parents, feel leery. I live in this gorgeous suburb, and even the homeless situation has even infiltrated our suburb, which was a bubble. There's no other way to describe it. An absolute bubble. A bubble, by the way, which I, without shame or apology, pay a great amount of money to live in. I want the bubble. Okay? And I'm not going to apologize to anybody for it. I want the bubble. And I'm paying exorbitantly for it. So when a homeless lady jumps out of the bushes at the high school cross country team, as they're doing their daily run, and tries to push one of the 15-year-old boys off a pedestrian bridge, that scares the hell out of me. I can't even let my daughter walk around by herself anymore because of that. No, nobody wants these facilities in their neighborhoods. Families sure don't. And I'm sure you agree with me, because if you have kids, or young family members that you care about, you're probably going, yeah, okay. But what about, the apartment complexes or, in West Hollywood or someplace where it's just kind of hip and trendy, but there's not really families? Well, those people pay a lot of money too. Those people don't like getting attacked by homeless people. Take a trip through Google and look up attacks. You know what? Don't go to Google. Actually, Google suppresses this search. Go to some other like DuckAGoGo or Bing or something. Don't go to Google. It's not going to give you the right results. It's not going to give you the proper results, I'll say. But you can search attacks by homeless people in California and you can see tragedy after tragedy, tragedy after tragedy. Last year, a man eating inside a restaurant with his family, holding his 5-year-old daughter in his lap. A homeless person walked into the restaurant, stabbed him in the neck, and he bled out and died while he was holding his daughter. And that is just one example. I have a friend who's a property manager. It's her job to travel to different properties throughout Southern California and check them out. And she told me the other day, Kira, I think I'm going to be killed by a homeless person. And she's an LA native, born and raised. She's like, I've never had this problem. We've always had homeless people around, but they're like your friendly neighborhood homeless people. I say hi to them. They say hi to me. I leave them a bottle of water here or there, buy them a sandwich. They mind their own business. They just don't want to be inside. She's like, back in the day, that's all this was. She's like, now you're talking about dangerous people who will attack. There was a lady up in San Francisco who was standing outside her building. A homeless man attacked her. She managed to struggle and get inside, but he got inside the lobby of the apartment building with her and brutally beat her until someone was able to come by, and together they were able to push him out the door and lock the lobby door. The police came, arrested him. He was back on the street the next day because you can't hold him because of the Prop 9 laws. So he was back on the street the next day in front of her apartment building. That lady moved. Go ahead and look that story up. See what we're up against here? This is not an issue of cruelty or people turning their heads, people looking away. You know who's looking away? Our government. The citizens of California are looking at this every day. Again, let me talk to you about my beautiful, idyllic Orange County suburb here. We're very close to the beach. We have several famous beaches nearby, and one of the rights of youth in Orange County is, you have bonfires. Well, my son and his friends had one bonfire last summer, and they were like, we can't do it anymore. Once the sun goes down, the beach becomes infected with homeless people. And they're not just people looking for a place to sleep. They go to the bathrooms, they shoot up in the bathrooms, they have sex in the bathrooms. They do everything but actually use the bathrooms. They defecate on the beach and they threaten the people who use the beach. They rob people. So our kids are no longer allowed to go hang out at the beach in the evening, even though we pay a lot of money to live in an area where you can go to the beach and chill out in the evening. The only people looking away from this problem are the politicians. I can tell you why, but that's a whole other episode, and I don't really give a rat's ass right now. We are not drowning in homelessness because people in California don't care. We are drowning in homelessness because the government doesn't care about the people of California, and that includes the homeless. They aren't animals. These are human beings. And our government looks at them like they are animals, like they are no better than the rats or rodents that infest their tent cities. And the government thinks that they don't deserve to live dignified lives because they don't know that they want it because they're just too dumb. The government treats them like animals that can't control themselves. And that's not what they are. They're human beings, as Drew said. And he says every day on his radio show on KABC. These are people that can be helped. A lot of these people are at stages in their mental deterioration where just a little bit of treatment will go a long way. And they might not be the type of citizens that you and I are, but they won't be a criminal element. They won't be an unsafe element. They can lead a dignified life. We don't want to give that to them because it's just easier to keep throwing money at the problem. And then, of course, there's all the corruption in government. Where is that $17 billion going? Who got the contract to build the housing that costs $700,000 a year? People in Venice Beach, I want to read to you. California policy said, I know that this episode's going long, but this is a real issue here. I can't stress it enough. We're dying. We really are. Here's something fun. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control, the average human produces 1 pound of feces per day. Simple math, therefore, tells us every week the homeless population deposits more than 4 tons of feces onto the gutters and sidewalks and driveways and lawns of places like Venice Beach. Venice Beach, you might know Venice Beach is like Muscle Beach, you know. You've seen it, especially in the 80s. It's a really popular beach for movies to film at, and still is. Overrun by homeless now. Overrun. Here's an account from an eyewitness in Venice Beach, a Venice Beach resident. People have to hose this crap down when it runs down the street to the sewer on Main Street. Westminster Elementary School serves the children of local residents. Kids pick up stuff. Dogs walk in the stuff. This is all tracked into homes and classrooms. They leave bottles of urine in their water bottles, figure about 16 tons per week, and then they leave the bottles. The only way these bottles don't accumulate forever is because property owners have to clean it up. Here's a letter somebody wrote to their councilman, Mike Bonin, who's an LA City Council member and who is actually one of maybe the people most responsible for the homeless issues, particularly in his district. This is not a good person. I don't even know how he keeps getting elected. No one seems to like him. Well, I think a lot of people are starting to reverse their decision on Bonin. In California, we're a blue state. A lot of it's just reflexive voting, and we don't take a lot of time to think about who we're voting for because we just know like Democrats good, Republicans bad, but like everyone's bad here in California. So we've got to change our mind on how we think about that. But here's a letter a resident wrote to Councilman Bonin. I just received my property tax bill. It sort of feels like a sick joke. Can you please let me know how I can deduct for services not rendered? I'm not paying for your bloated administrative costs anymore. Our streets are lawless. They're covered in feces. Our crime rate is spiraling. How can you force us to live in such horrible conditions? Don't you see that the city of Los Angeles is actually the number 1 slumlord in the nation? And here's another interesting one. I almost got attacked by 3 dogs off leash. This is another kind of interesting. I'm going to take a side break here to explain this. This is another interesting side effect of the homeless issue is animals. A lot of them have animals and they don't. I mean, we have strict leash laws. Everyone in Southern California has a dog. Well, of course we have strict leash laws. We have poop pickup laws, like you'll get cited. I've been cited several times for not registering the animal properly, which I do not register my animal with the government. I don't need the government to give me permission to have a dog, but you're supposed to. And so the homeless people obviously don't do any of that. Not only that, their dogs are vicious because they're feral, just like the homeless person. Not only that, there's this weird epidemic of homeless people stealing dogs. So there's a case in Long Beach recently where a woman had a dog. It was her favorite dog, her pet. And a homeless person stole him. It was a pit bull. A homeless person stole him. And then when she tried to get it back, the homeless person tried to attack her. So she went to get the police, and the police said, we can't do anything. We have no proof that this is your dog. We can't take the dog from the homeless person. She had to launch like a radio campaign. She had to like call in the local radio stations. And finally people shamed the police department and animal control enough that they were able to get the dog back. But this is another weird side effect. Animals. I was almost attacked by 3 dogs off leash, fighting with another dog early this evening. I told another neighbor to walk his dog the other way. He appreciated the advice. This is ridiculous. To our, quote, respected council and city people, you pad your pockets and don't think we don't know it. We are not blind and dumb. We get poorer so you can pocket money, and yet our living conditions have gone to hell in a handbasket, and you drove the bus. Make amends. Listen to us. We are hardworking in all variety of type and type of work, peoples who come together to help each other. Some people are wealthy, some fighting for their every last dollar to maintain at least an apartment. Start doing something that actually, for the actual problem. And the person goes on and on. I found this one really interesting from a Venice Beach resident, and I'll let this be the last one. But because it actually does have some politics in it, it made my eyebrows raise. This person wrote to their councilman, Mike Bonin, 2 years ago, I would have voted for anyone but Trump. After watching Bonin and Garcetti, that's the LA mayor, attract drug addicts and criminals to LA and Venice, I'll never vote for a Democrat again. Bonin and Garcetti lie about the drug and crime epidemic, calling it a housing crisis so they can pay their donors with HHH money. Don't believe me? Look at who is donating to their nonprofits, housing developers and service providers. Women and elderly and even men are afraid to walk the streets at night. 2 of my friends were attacked by homeless criminals in the last month alone. The new encampment on Hampton, who say they are waiting for the MTA bridge home to open. A bridge home is just a fancy word for homeless shelter, are doing drugs and chopping up stolen bikes in broad daylight. A group of us are working with the White House. They are close to an intervention to protect us. Instead of asking the Fed for federal land to build housing out there, Garcetti is asking for money to give to his donors. We are going to escalate this to the national level until the federal government comes in to protect us. Do you hear what's happening here, folks? Californians, true blue Californians who hate Donald Trump, are asking him to come and intervene in our state business. And I'm for states' rights. If you listen to the show enough, you know I am a federalist. A federalist means that you believe in states' rights and that the federal government should be as weak as possible and should only provide a few things. The governance, of course, Supreme Court, Congress, all of that. And then enforcing borders, enforcing national security, and then, of course, foreign matters. And there are some other, other nuances in between. And I get that the federal government provides far more than that lately. And I hate that. And thus, I hate the idea of the feds rolling into a free state like the great state of California and taking over our streets. But I am to the point where I will welcome it. I will be standing there in the streets as the tanks roll down, throwing plastic straws in the air. Yes, hail the feds, hail the feds. We're desperate here, folks. And I just implore you to not blame the taxpayer anymore. Please, please give us a break. If you don't live in this state and you haven't seen what's been going on here with your own eyes and you're not sure, I hope that this has been helpful. But I also want to implore you, please, please do not think that we are heartless, the taxpayer. Do not think that we are being selfish. This is far beyond that. And by the way, when does our responsibility as a taxpayer end? Are we just perpetually responsible for people who refuse to get help? At what point do we say we can no longer do anything for this person, move along, or be arrested? Why is a taxpayer obligated to provide housing for every single person? Why? No, honestly, I'm not even saying that as to be cruel or to be like, I don't want to come up off my money. Believe me, I'm a California resident. I come up off of plenty of money, both voluntarily and involuntarily. But at what point am I responsible for? I can barely afford my own housing. Why am I responsible for somebody who doesn't want housing? And I'm still responsible to give that person money. At some point, something has to be done for the taxpayer. We have done everything. We have done everything for the people who do not want the help and can't or won't contribute to the help. We have done everything. We are sick of this. All of us, liberals, Democrats, conservatives, Republicans, independents, black, white, Hispanic, everybody's sick of it. Everywhere you go in this part of the country, people are talking about homelessness. You cannot set foot in one space where homelessness is not an issue. It is not a discussion. Everyone's sick and tired of it. So please, my fellow Americans, when you look upon us in California, please do not judge the taxpayer. We've been doing our part and we're desperate and tired. This is an issue with our government, an issue with not using the right apparatuses to treat the problem, which is to enforce our vagrancy laws, reinstate sanatoriums so we can commit some of the mentally ill and criminally insane people that are now on the streets, so we can force them into health care. Did you know that Dr. Drew was on Skid Row the other day and he ran into a guy whose leg was literally rotting. The flesh was rotting off his leg. It had rotted to the point where he could see the bone. And Drew begged him, let me get you treatment. I'll pay for everything. Let me take you to a hospital right now. That guy wouldn't go. He didn't want to go because he was crazy. If we had sanatoriums again, we could commit him against his will and force him into treatment, get him some medication. And then when he becomes a little more lucid, figure out where his family, where his people are, figure out how to get him into a program that can set him off to the next level. It is not compassion to leave that man lying in the street because we're uncomfortable with the idea of forcing people into medical care. Even third world countries don't leave guys like that on the street because it's unsanitary and they're dangerous in lots of ways. So we need to be able to enforce our vagrancy laws. We need sanatoriums. We need to get rid of this spigot of never-ending cash to the politicians because all they ever do is waste it or spread it around amongst themselves. It's obviously not going to help the situation at all. We need to change our laws again. We need to change them back into something that empowers the business owner, empowers the citizen again. And so we're not the victims all day, every day. And we need the ability to take our own steps to protect our property. We should be allowed to clear homeless encampments if they're on our property. We should be allowed to clear fire hazards if they're on our property. We should be allowed to clean the steps in front of our business if someone has pooped on our property. These are not insane things to ask. The state of California makes you feel like you're insane for asking. That's where we're at, folks. And I just beg of you to show us a little understanding, a little grace, and get on our side because we're really doing the best we can here. We really are. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a little bit of a personal episode for me, and I know it's not typically what I do, but I just felt like I feel so moved to address this issue for people they don't understand. And it bothers me that we, the taxpayers, are being made to look in other parts of the country. We're being made to look like we're greedy or something. And that's not at all what's happening here. I promise you. Despite the craziness, California is still full of good and giving citizens and community members. And I'm proud to be a part of that part of the state, the part of the state that is community minded and willing to sacrifice for each other. Those people are everywhere, all across the state. And that's what makes me proud to be a Californian. My politicians, not so much. Okay, please, if you've heard anything that you would like to push back against today, or maybe you've got your own story about how homelessness has affected you here in California and what you think the solutions are, head over to my Twitter at realkiradavis, and you can find my email in my bio, and then shoot me an email. Or if you go to Facebook and you type in Real Kira Davis, it'll take you to my public page and you can drop a message on there or drop a comment and maybe other people will comment. If it's interesting enough, I'll do a response. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I would love if you would go over to iTunes and just hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and then maybe leave a good review or a good rating. It helps so much. And thank you to the people who have left good ratings and reviews. I'm so encouraged by just the eloquent comments on the iTunes page. So thank you so much. Thank you to our home at FCB Radio. Don't forget, you can listen to Yourself anywhere, basically where you find podcasts, iHeartRadio. We've now got a TuneIn radio station. Yeah, it's like a whole station now. So FCB Network has a series of stellar programs on the network, and now you can go to one place and find all the programs. So it's just like a regular radio station. It's at TuneIn Radio. So go ahead and go over there and just search FCB Radio Network and you'll come up, and my show will come up. Thank you so much to everybody. I will catch you all next week. Until then, don't forget to just stop and listen to yourself every once in a while. Listen to what you're saying. Bye, guys.